Okay, today, by the end, I'll be introducing the loans and investment project. That's going to replace a test for this unit. Okay, so you already had a test, but it wasn't on the ones that were monthly. Remember back to the days when we didn't have monthly, we were just doing things like, for instance, this. Don't write this down, I'm just giving you an example. Do you get that was exponential growth? And it started with 5. And it was geometric. Remember all that stuff? All right, so now you're not going to be tested on that kind of stuff. You're going to be tested on, oh, it's also, erasing this and adding a lot more, divided by 12, which means monthly. For this project, everything is done monthly. Okay? I'm going to repeat that. Everything is done monthly for this project. But what if they say, but you had 7% interest for 1 year? Isn't that for a year? Yes, but it's done monthly. So every month they recalculate your interest and give you part of your interest, and they do that every month. I'll show you how that's different than for the year. Okay, and then if I go plus 200, remember how that changed it to a investment? Versus if that had been a minus, then we'd be talking about a loan. Does that ring a bell? Okay. And let's go with, we start with $5,000 because it's a little more realistic of a investing kind of situation. If I do this, am I adding to it every month? Yes, I am. What if I just erase this? Then you're not adding to it every month. But is it still monthly? Yes, it is. And that means if you want to know what happened 2 years from now, do you get kids do this all the time and they think, that's 2 years from now, use sub 2. No, that's 2 months from now. Does that make sense? What if you want 2 years from now? You got to do u sub 24. That would be 2 years from now. So we're always going to use monthly for this whole project. Okay, so keep that in your head. Next, if you want to know what the payments should be to work out to an exactly perfect payment to pay it off in like 5 years, then that's a job for the Tmv Solver. The TMV, time value of money, solver, will tell you what a good payment would be. But once you know that payment, I want you to put it right here and use the sequence mode on your calculator. Let me show you why. Because we're about to do this example where we're going to take $5,000 at 7% divided by 12, and we're not going to add anything to it monthly. No payment. Do you get that this, when put in the sequence mode, will get you an answer? Do you get that if I change it to not divided by 12, I'll get a different answer? And if I use the Tmv Solver, I'll get a third answer. 3 different answers to the same question. So that's why I'm going to tell you when to use what. And for this project, remember me saying we're always going to be dividing by 12? All right, so would you please put that one into your calculator if you haven't already. And I'd like you to tell me, after 2 years, how much money do you have? Pause while you give that a try. Okay, so you put in n-min is 0 because this is a real world problem, right? And then you have u sub n minus 1 times 1 plus 0.07 divided by 12. Remember, for this project, we're always going to do monthly. And then, how do I get the answer? You still have a chance to mess up. You go over here to the table, and first of all, my table is, for some unknown reason, starting at 5. Okay? So, where exactly do I want to be on this table? 24? Well, some kids are going to put in 2 because they're not going to realize that they're in months. So 24 is correct. I'm going to arrow down until I hit 24. Okay, now this is an important point. We are doing this project as are everybody else that's doing projects, are doing it to the penny. That means I totally get how you would think the answer to this was 5749. But if you arrow on top of it, do you get it's actually 5749.03? You might be thinking it's only 3 cents off. Why would you want to lose points for not rounding correctly? I am going to mark it off if you aren't careful with your pennies. Why? Because when you do things like this and you do it for 30 years and you're off by 3 cents every month for 30 years, you're either going to be way short or you're going to be way over. It does make a difference after 30 years. Okay, so we don't want to be off. So be careful with that. Arrow on to the number and you'll see exactly what its extended decimal is, and always do your answers to the rounded pennies, 2 decimal places. Okay, so now I know that my answer is my $5,000 grew to $5,749.03. So what would it have been if we had used the Tmv Solver? Let's do the same exact problem in there. You can get that answer. So everybody go to Apps, Finance, Tmv Solver, and what's the number of months here? 24, so I put that in N. Interest rate, 7%. Principal value, 5,000. That's our starting value. Payments. Oh, this is important. I need to put in a negative 5,000. I'm sorry, I did that wrong. Now I know some of you are going to be like, what? Because I took the 5,000 out of my daily money and I set it aside over somewhere else, that's a negative 5,000. Because it's negative to my bank account, I put it in this investment where I'm not going to touch it for a long time. So I'm going to make both of these negative, or I'm going to make both of them positive. But do you get it? If I make both of them positive, the answer comes out negative? So the negatives do get weird on this. Trust me for now, would you please put it in as negative 5,000 and negative 350. And now my future value, I don't know the future value. We'll calculate it. That's what this is for. And then don't forget that the last two are important. Payments per year, 12. Compounding per year, 12. And one way you could goon your whole project is to have payments on beginning versus end. Please have it on end for the PMT at the very end. Okay, question. Oh, you're right. In this case, the payment, I'm sorry. We are going to have ones where we have a payment into them, and when we do, it'll be negative, and it's my bad. Sorry. You're right. This one is a 0 payment. Thank you. Now let's go to future value. So I'm going to alpha solve. Isn't that different than what we just said? Is it exactly the same? Okay. All right. Cool. Well, that one's the same as the sequence mode. Trust me, depending on the problem, it's not always the same. It's usually really close, but also this one, you have a chance of messing up the negative 5,000. Do you get that if I put it in one of these as negative and one of them as positive, like the payment and the present value, you can get messed up at the end because of the negatives. So that's why I'm going to say, what I want you to use this for is only to calculate what your payments should be. It's very good at that. And that sequence mode can't calculate how big your payment should be. But this Tmv Solver can. All right, we're going to do one more little calculation just to kind of draw this all together. Remember, it was 5749.03. Let's do one last thing. Go back to sequence mode on your calculator with the y equals button. And over here, just for now, change this divided by 12 to divided by 0.1. Do you get dividing by 1 means you're not really dividing by anything? I mean, it's like you're not even doing anything. But it's holding the place, because remember me saying in the project we're always going to use divide by 12? All right, so we're just trying to have this disappear for now. All right, so you're dividing by 0.1. And then we go and do our same exact problem, and you'll see that not only is it a different month, because it's U sub 2 now for 2 years. U sub 2 actually is 2 years. It's not 2 months because we changed that. But also the number's going to be different. All right, so I'm going to go to table settings, and I want to start on table or line 2. And then I'm going to go back and hit table. And remember how it's supposed to be 574903? 5724.5. It is different. So doing it monthly, even though we're not adding anything every month, that's different, and it's more if you do it when you divide by 12. So more compoundings gives you more money. So what do they do in the real world? They actually compound it daily. So technically, we do our function, our feature here, and we would divide by 365. And they're even more complicated than that because they factor in leap years. Okay, so anyway, we're not going to do that. We're just going to do it monthly to keep it simple. But the more times you compound it, slightly more money every time. And I know for us, you might be like, that isn't that big of a deal. $57.49 compared to 24, that's only like $24. Or even less. Maybe it's, let me think, what is it, like 24, 34, 44, 20. That's about 25 bucks. What if these were in millions? You gotta be 25 million? Do you think your client would care if you just, oh, we just did this thing and it's just a tiny difference, it's only $25 million? You think your client might have a problem with that? You're making an accounting error that cost them $25 million? Okay, so my point is, when the numbers are big enough, even a penny totally matters. You know what I'm saying? If Apple, who has 500 million people with an iPhone, decides to do something that only costs them a penny, it's 500 million pennies. That's a lot of money. Okay. All right, so let's get to your project. So to do your project, some of the kids this year are going to do a project, this is not you, that where they talk about that someday they might want to buy a boat or a car, okay? And then they're going to compare, what if I had got a loan for it, what's the total I would have spent, versus what if I had saved up to get that car. But on Sunday, I reworked this project because I have a really strong feeling about how I want to talk to you about college. Because do you think any of you are going to buy a boat like next year? I think it's pretty unlikely. Are some of you going to college next year? Yes, it's true. Some of you, I know some of you are like, I'm a freshman, but there's juniors in here. Okay, some people are going to college next year, and they'll be deciding between going the route where they have 50,000 in loans or 100,000 in loans, and some kids have 120,000 in loans, and some kids don't understand loans at all. So this actually could make a big difference to some people. If I can save one kid from taking out tons in loans and not knowing that, oh my gosh, quote from a random person within the last week that I know, said, I wish somebody would have told me that taking out, going to this college versus that college would mean this much more in loans. And because now they have to pay them, it's going to be like 10 years of pain. So I'm not saying you shouldn't get loans at all. I'm not saying that, because many kids will have to have loans. But you will get a choice to some extent on how much you spend in your loans, because some of you will have to go to colleges. No, some of you will have a choice between two colleges, one of which will be way more expensive than the other. And it's going to be really enticing, because the reason it's more expensive is because there's probably some nice things about it. And I just want to make sure you understand the difference. For some of you, this will be an eye-opener on how much difference there is. Okay, so let's do a loan situation. Everybody right now on your on your calculator, put in this scenario. $50,000 loan. $50,000 loan. When would you ever take that much? A lot of kids. We have 800 kids in Minnetonka. A lot of them are going to end up with $50,000 in loans. There'll be a small number that'll take way more than that in loans. And there'll be some people that will just take the average amount, which you'll learn later. But 50,000, it'll happen all the time. A lot of people will have 50,000 in loans. Okay, so that's right here, right? So I put 50,000. And for school loans, I will say 7% is a little high. You usually don't have to pay that much interest for your school loans, although it does depend. If you go to a regular bank, it can be that high. So let's make it 5%. Now, this next one, we're going to do everything monthly. Find me somebody who does student loan payments that isn't monthly. It's always going to be monthly. Okay? And next, remember, if this is a loan, we subtract right here. This is a minus. And then what's the payment? Wrong tool. This thing doesn't know what the payment should be. So we leave it right there, and then we go to our other tool. Everybody go to Apps, Finance, Tmv Solver. Now, number of months. What is a typical payback for college loans? 10 years is typical. Now, some people do 5, but that's like you really have to push hard and pay extra and, sacrifice. And it's a good thing. I think it's awesome if people pay them off faster. But it is very typical to have 10 years. Some people will die and never have paid off their student loans because they just never pay them off. Because they're, they just keep hanging over the head. They don't pay as much enough to get it over with. And so, anyway, how long is the student loan? It depends. But I'm going to pick the number 10 years because we really ought to have it done by at least 10 years. So if I put a 10 here, why did I just screw up? That'd be 10 months. So I got to go 10 times 12. And that is 120 months. Interest rate is 5%. How much did you borrow? Remember, this is negative. Negative. No, wait, it's not negative. My bad. When you borrow 50,000, money came from somebody else and went into your account. So that's positive 50,000. I know that's confusing, but if I borrow money from you, didn't you just give me money? Yeah. Now, usually people then borrow it to spend it. You don't usually borrow it just to sit on it in your cave like Smaug. But you usually borrow it and then you spend it on college. So people get confused by this. But this is a positive 50,000 right here. All right. And then the payment. This is what this is good at. It's going to tell us what the payment should be. And do you get that it will be negative because it's going to be coming out of your account every month? That's why it'll be negative when we're solving for that. All right, future value. Why do I want the future value of this to be 0? Because you got to pay it off then in 10 years. Always use 12, 12, and end. Okay? The bottom 3 things are super simple. Always use 12, 12, and end. All right, now I go solve for payment, and I go alpha, solve, $530 payments. So that's not that bad. Well, it's not that good either, but it is like a car payment. So it's not going to be very fun to have that for 10 years, but you could probably handle it, maybe. All depends on your job, doesn't it? You get that if you literally made $1 an hour, you could never pay that back? Okay, so then I have a factor in the project you're going to do that's like, well, what do you want your job to be? Because it depends. Can you pay that back? Depends what job you have. Well, how much can you afford to spend? You can afford to spend 10% of what you make. That is the most that the U.S. Department of Education says, don't borrow more than what you need, and it should be so that your 10% of your income is enough to pay your college loans. Obviously, the dream college loan is no loan at all. But if you have loans, you should make it so that 10% of your income is the most that you would spend. Now, I know there's actually a lot of people that are paying 20% of their income, and they live in mom and dad's basement to make ends meet because they have these huge student loan payments. But ideally, you're going to be able to live in an apartment or house and drive a car, and you're going to eat, and all these things are going to take some of your money. So 10% of it is the amount that you're supposed to spend on student loans. About 25% of it usually goes for housing. That's where a lot of people can get away with, ooh, if I live with mom, I don't have to pay that 25% for an apartment, and then I can use that to pay down my student loans. And I totally get that. I offered my kids, if you want to stay with us so you can pay off any loans you have, that'd be totally cool. Because it saves them a lot of money to not have to go pay rent. All right, so we're going with 10% of your income. All right, so that means that this person could make about $5,000 a month, so that $500 a month would be about 10%. So if your job makes $5,000 a month, you're okay. Well, who makes $5,000 a month? You're going to be looking that up too. Okay. If you're a barista, do you think you make $5,000 a month? No, not unless you do an amazing job on the tips. You're not making $5,000 a month. Okay. If you're a doctor, of course. If you're a dentist, definitely. If you're an engineer, probably still okay, because engineers usually make about 60. But that's one of the things you're going to look up in your project. So you figure out what you're interested in. And some people, this is the first moment where they go, okay, I want to be an English teacher, and they have no idea how much an English teacher makes. Google starting salary English teacher. That's one of the keys here is you have to use starting salary. Most people's salaries go up over time, but when do you have to make those loan payments? Right when you come out of college, like right away. They don't give you a few years to get your feet under you. Like literally 1 month from getting your first job, you got to start paying your college loans. So we always have to look up starting salary. Okay, so here's what you do tonight. Here's your homework for tonight. Your homework for tonight is figure out a job that you're interested in, and maybe you'll have to go through 2 or 3 and go, actually, how much they make, maybe I don't want to do that. Look up 2 or 3 jobs. Look up how much they pay per year, starting salary, and I will burn you on that. If you come to me with your project and say, I'm going to be a teacher and they make $70,000 a year, I'll be like, no, they don't. Nobody starts at $70,000 a year. Unless you maybe are going to work on the Aleutian Islands in Alaska. Because it's actually true that they actually make a lot of money. But then again, a carton of milk costs like $8, so it's super expensive to live up in the bush country of Alaska. So anyway, be specific. How much do you make as a starting salary? You're going to look that up tonight, and you're going to come back with a number. And no, you don't have to become this for real. This is just a project. But look it up. Look up something you're interested in. Don't just look up engineer because that's what your friend wants to be. Look up something you're interested in. And then we'll figure out what 10% of that is. And then we'll figure out what the monthly amount is. And then we'll know how much you can afford for student loans. And then you'll be able to figure out, well, then I better not take out more than this amount for student loans. Yes? Good question. There's the terminology base salary means that's your salary without benefits. So that's not the starting salary. Okay, so if you see base salary, don't do that because a lot of times, I'll give you an example. You could be a salesman and have a base salary of $50,000, but you get bonuses of like $20,000. So all of a sudden your base salary actually looks too low because you actually get a lot of other money besides your base salary. So don't use the word base, use the word starting salary. If you do starting salary of, waitress or whatever, just look up whatever you're interested in, and then we'll be able to do this project. All right, I have one last thing, and I got to make sure you know how to see what is the grand total that you end up paying in a loan situation. So we started this one doing the $50,000 college loan at 5%. We figured out our payments. Now remember, do it to the penny, 530.33. See me rounding that to the penny? If you don't round that right, you're going to lose some points. I'm not saying you'll fail the whole project, but you'll lose points. 530.33. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to put that in here. $530.33. All right. Now, remember what that was programmed for. That was programmed for a 10-year payoff. Do you get I don't want to arrow down like 1,000 times? So I'm going to go to my table settings. 10 years is, wait a minute, table set. 10 years is 120 months. I'm going to have my table start there. Now I'm going to go to my table and make sure it'll always be close, but it's never perfect. That was a really close payment, but remember how he had to round it? It's not going to be perfect. Either we'll have to pay a little bit more to be paid off, or we will have paid off the month before this, so we have to look close to see exactly how much did we pay. Okay, so do you remember this deal where if it was positive, we still owed them money, and then when it hits a negative number, they actually owe us money? So right there, after 120 payments, they owe us money. So do you get, if you don't factor in, that they're going to send you 37 cents, or 38 actually is what this would round to? Watch me arrow onto it. I can see it's 376, which rounds to 38 cents. Yes, if you don't factor in the 38 cents, you're going to lose some points in your project. Not like fail it, but why lose 5% for something stupid like that? Okay, so what's the total that you paid for the loan? I know, right this second, if I tested you on it, half of you would probably get it right easy. And then there'd probably be at least 10% that have no idea how you figure out the total you paid. I'm going to do a dice of destiny to see if that random person happens to know. How do we figure out the total we paid over those 10 years? It is row 4, person 2. Do you know? Very good. Our payment, which was $530, don't forget the pennies. $530.33, very good. Times 120, but then, so I'm going to do that. Just everybody remember the 38 cents. So our payment, 530.33 times 120 months. Why isn't that just the answer? 63,000. Well, it's pretty dang close. But now we have to subtract off. They owe us money back. They owe us, how much was it? 30 what? 38 cents back, 0.38. There's your final answer to the penny. How much did you pay for this $50,000 loan? $63,639. So moral of the story, you pay more than you expect because of interest. All right, so this project, you're going to look at it. The first few questions are pretty easy, but then it gets kind of in depth. But remember that it's a 3-day project. Today I explained how to do it. So you go home and your only homework is to do parts 1 through 5 tonight, ideally, and you don't even have to get all of that done. But ideally, you'll look up a job, you'll figure out what 10% of the, or figure out how much it is monthly for the starting salary, and find 10% of that. And anyway, it's pretty easy to start with. And then you're going to be finishing this project all day tomorrow to work in class, part of the next day to work in class, and then it's due on Wednesday. Or did I make it Thursday? I think it's due Thursday. I think it's due Thursday night. Okay, so you have multiple days to work on this one worksheet I'm about to give you. Normally you'd have this worksheet and be like, that's your homework. Honestly, you could do this in one night. This is doable in one night. If I had to do this project, if I was assigned this project right now, I bet I could finish it in 15 minutes. Whole project. You go, okay, orthodontist. How much does orthodontist make? Starting salary. Okay, divide that by 12. Okay, times 10% of that. Okay, now I know how much I can spend on student loans. Then I do the loan part, and I see, ooh, I make enough. Yay, because I'm orthodontist, and everybody's going to usually look up jobs that are really like highly paid. Some of you actually will do those jobs, and others of you won't, but usually people can make believe in whatever they want right there on the job. Then the rest of the project is just like how much would you get if you compare that to Bob, who took out more student loans than you, and then figure out Bob's payment and figure out how much more Bob's payment was than your payment was. It's basically like a really long test question. So don't worry, you can do this, especially considering we give you multiple days. I want you to be able to pause and talk to friends about like what jobs make what amount of money and what college you might be interested in and that kind of stuff. So I want this to be able to be kind of a leisurely, like actually kind of enjoy the learning part. And if it was just this one worksheet, seriously, I could just assign it as one night's homework. You could do it. It's be a little long for one night, but it's way easy for 3 nights. Okay? All right, so that's your homework for tonight. Everybody find the worksheet, which is in Schoology. There's only one thing under today's date. I'm going to pause and show you what that looks like. Okay, so this is the loans and investment project, and you click on that, and there's only one thing in there. It's this document right here. And then if you click on that, it's basically just like kind of like a worksheet. It helps you think through what jobs you're interested in. And again, I suggested that you'd be really smart if you could get up through problem 5. So why don't you work on that? If you get stuck on any parts of it, ask. I made this project because I didn't want it to be all individual. Some parts of it, you'll get the same answer as the kid next to you. Some parts of it are unique to you because you're picking out that job and you're seeing how much they make. But some parts you can compare. So that way you can kind of work together with people, and it's okay. I know it's counting in the summative category, but you can work with other people on the parts that it should be the same as each other. All right. And that's all I have for you for today.